Hi everyone! This video is going to go through some basics of Fusion 360 just to get us all started and learn how to use the interface a little bit better. Now, first thing you're going to want to do is boot up Fusion 360, which should be on your desktop, or you can go and type Fusion 360 in your start menu and open it up from there. Now, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to boot up, so while you're waiting, you should also go to the third slide to download the modern table design example. Now, there are some instructions here. We're going to basically be following these steps to set up our project and set up our folder structure so that you have this example available on any computer you choose to open it on. So first I'm going to click this, choose download, and now I have the modern table design. It's going to show up on my downloads folder, but I'm just going to drag it to my desktop. Oh, it's just giving a weird recovery thing, don't have to worry about that. I'm going to drag this to my desktop here. So now I have the file, and I have Fusion 360. Now, Fusion 360 by default might look something like this. You have an untitled project open with nothing, and you might even have it looking like this. So basically this empty expanse of nothingness. Well, how do you actually learn how to use the interface without looking at something? So that's why we downloaded that example. But instead of just double clicking the example, what I want you to do is set up a folder structure first. So that's in the steps here. We're going to go, we need to expand the data panel, create a new project, and create a folder inside it, and then we upload the file into that folder. So this is the data panel in the top left corner here. And then you press new project and you call that engineering 1112. And then inside here, we're going to create a new folder called examples. Okay. And then in the examples folder, we're going to press upload and select the file from the desktop. Open. And then we're going to tell it to go into the engineering 1112 examples. Upload. And so what it's going to do is it's actually going to upload it to the cloud and also upload it to your project so that it's synced up and you can actually open it from any computer that uses that you have Fusion 360 installed on. So you could work on it at home and then at school and not have to worry about carrying your computer back and forth if you want. Now that I've actually uploaded it, I press close. And now inside here, I have my engineering 1112 examples and then modern table design. I can double click that, and that's going to actually open up the design. And there we are. Now we have a pretty neat looking table here. And I'm going to walk you through a few things. Now, if you're really familiar with CAD, basically we're at this step, and there's a few things about navigation and some other tricks that I'm going to walk you through. But you can also just look at the slides at any time or have them open at the same time and kind of go at your own pace. But basically, navigation is the most important. How do we navigate around? Well, first of all, you can zoom in and out, and it's an inverted zoom by default. So pulling back will zoom in and pulling forward will zoom out. Okay, that's on the middle mouse button. Okay. You can also hold Shift and click with your middle mouse button to spin. Okay. This is called basically just spinning. And then you can hold, if you just click the middle mouse button, you can do what's called a pan. Okay. Or actually, this is called an orbit. Sorry. There is a technical term called orbit, but basically it's spin. So you have panning, orbiting, and zooming. Okay. Take a minute to just get comfortable with that and try to focus on different things. Like look at the corner, see the joint between the two pieces of wood. See if you can actually zoom in and take a look at it. Okay, you can actually see that there's a bit of a bevel, right? If we zoom in. Now let's actually like look at the bottom, look at the underside of the table. Let's get comfortable zooming in at different parts. So you can see how the glass is actually embedded down below. So this is super important to have these basic skills to navigate. Oh, and we can see here that the glass is actually inserted inside a little slot. So this table actually slots in, which is actually a really neat design. This table comes in two parts, and you can just take these parts off and you just have a glass panel. So that's the basics of our navigation. You have zooming in, orbiting, and panning. Okay? And down at the bottom, you also have the same options again. You can click it if you're more comfortable. Just click it and then it activates it. Click it again. You can activate this tool and then click this one, activate this tool. But I prefer the hotkeys because then I'm more fast. I have one finger on the keyboard and I have, well, basically one hand on the keyboard to do different hotkeys. Then I have my other hand on the mouse at all times. Now, there are some tips if you are using other types of mice, like maybe you're using a trackpad. You can try these techniques, which might or might not work depending on if you're using a Mac or some other trackpad. I highly suggest getting your own mouse though. But let's talk about the view cube. So the view cube is the thing at the top right corner, and you can actually grab it to pivot at any point, and it kind of tells you where it is that you're looking. So here I can say, oh, I'm looking at the top now. Oh, now I'm looking at the front. I'm looking at the left side. And you can see that these are the different axes. You have your X, your Y, and your Z axis. Okay? And you can also click, and it jumps right to that view. Top, and I can click here to go to the side, click here to go to an angle. And if I get really lost, let's say I'm like, whoa, I'm zoomed in like crazy, I don't know where I am anymore. What's going on? Well, you move your mouse up here, press home, and you're back. You can breathe a sigh of relief. So it's pretty hard to get lost as long as you know that you have the view cube, and the view cube has always got your back. Okay? That's the basics of navigation. Now, there are a few other things you can do in here. You can switch between orthographic view and perspective view. And you know from class, perspective means it includes vanishing points. Okay? So it actually gets smaller as it fades into the background. Whereas orthographic, you can see the difference. Watch. This edge is actually the same size as this edge now. They're not different anymore. Whereas perspective, this one's bigger and that one's smaller because it has vanishing points. So that is the one other neat thing that you can do. I usually model in orthographic, but then at the end I take a look at the perspective. Okay? So now we've looked around, we're getting comfortable with using the tools. One other thing that you can toggle, I like to go down here and there's some settings that I like to change. Well, first of all, I turn on the layout grid. This gives me a sense of where the ground plane is. Now it's a bit, you can tell that they've modeled it below the ground plane, but at least it gives me a sense of like where I am in the world, so I know if I'm on the bottom or the top or the side. You can always turn it off if you don't like it. That's the layout grid. And there's also some other things you can change. There are different visual styles. You can change like wireframe mode, for example, which shows you just the outlines. Or you go back and go shaded with hidden edges, so you can see all the edges behind. I usually do the hidden edges when I'm modeling, and then at the end switch to shaded so that I can just see the appearance. Another thing that you might want to look into is the effects. By default, you might actually have ground shadows probably turned on, ambient occlusion is probably turned on, anti-aliasing is probably turned on. What those do is it's similar to what video games do. They make the graphics look better, but at a cost. So it's a performance cost. I'm lucky enough I have a computer that I can run a recording and have it be nice and smooth. But if your computer is having trouble, then just go down to your effects and turn off ambient occlusion, turn off anti-aliasing, turn off ground shadow, keep the ground plane on, but everything else you don't need. And then it'll keep it nice and efficient. And then maybe at the very end, you can turn on the high-end specs to see what it might look like in real life. So those are the basics. And what I want you to do as your first little activity practicing is to practice using the view cube, spinning around, looking at some of the different details. Now, one other thing that I want you to do is the timeline. So the timeline is down at the bottom, and this timeline is actually showing you the procedure that was made to build this. So if I go all the way back and then I press play, I can watch as it's being built. You can see all the different steps. And at any point you can press escape and it'll end it back to the beginning. Or you can even step through one at a time. Say, okay, they made that, they made that, they made that. Interesting. And then how did they design this? Okay, so they did the legs. And you can even go and look at these drawings. Oh, you can click this and say, okay, so this was a drawing that they put where the legs were going to go. And then they did that one. What's this? Okay, those are finished. Then they moved, they copied. So this is a copy paste. They copied, moved. Ah, so you can start to see the process. Then they added that, extruded it, and so forth until they got to the end. So that's the fundamentals of navigation and getting comfortable with the different procedures in Fusion 360. Next, we're going to talk about making our own stuff. So stay tuned for the next video, and thanks for watching.